Welcome back. Now, faced with a multitude of problems, President Cyril Ramaphosa's declaration of a national state of disaster over the energy crisis has been met with mixed reaction. Speaking at the State of the Nation address last night, he also announced an appointment of a Minister of Electricity in the presidency. Let's get the business reaction on his speech with the director, Biniza, who is joining us from Abidjan in the Ivory Coast. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. I think the biggest thing is the fact that the president is announcing that there's going to now be a new Minister of Electricity. And, you know, South Africans like to make everything quite a joke, saying there's now going to be a Minister of Potholes. But do you think that this is going to actually deal with the energy crisis and bring an end to the rolling blackouts?
Sure. Look, I think the country is really going through a really difficult time, and it's a struggle to see what new plans or approaches and solutions that the president was laying out yesterday. There's really nothing new, and he said it in his speech that he's reviving an old plan. And I think the decision to appoint a Minister of Electricity, it sounds like a joke. It really doesn't give one any confidence that there's going to be any improvement in the current economic and energy crisis that we're facing. Firstly, this doesn't allow for accountability, because although obviously all interventions are aimed at reducing the problem of load shedding, we've got three now, with the addition of the Minister of Electricity, sources of power or responsibility. One being the Minister of Public Enterprises, who is in charge of ESCOM and the restructuring that's taking place there. The other being the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, who is in charge of the IPP program and the renewable energy procurement and the emergency procurement of energy. And now with the addition of the electricity minister, it's going to be difficult to understand who actually is going to be responsible for reducing load shedding. And if we don't see any progress, we're going to see a lot of pointing of fingers rather than really accountability. And I think it's really just doesn't give one much confidence at all. And even if you look at some of the steps that have been outlined, I mean, the speech yesterday was predominantly all about resolving the electricity crisis, very little on anything else. And most of the so-called 5-point plan is actually just 2 points. One being that the government is aiming to procure independent power, as well as try to resolve the crisis at ESCOM. But to me, that sounds like business as usual. So yes, Heidi, this really doesn't give one confidence that we are now moving away from the business as usual and getting into rolling up our sleeves and making a difference into solving the crisis that we're facing.
Yes, certainly, because you speak about accountability, and it's also got a lot to do with confidence in the current Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, the Minister of Public Enterprises, the ESCOM CEO and the ESCOM board. You have all these positions and all these ministers and boards and CEO, but you still probably don't see confidence in them, because you're now specifically appointing a Minister of Electricity that's going to report directly to the President. Many would say that this is just throwing a person at the problem and not actually finding the right skilled person to deal with the energy crisis. I'm going to put you on the spot, Sia, and ask you who you think would be the right person to be the Minister of Electricity, because that's going to be quite a challenging job. They have the biggest challenge to get the country out of darkness.
So, look, it's a difficult one because, firstly, I don't think that there are any new ideas around the table. And as the president said, he's rehashing his own plan from last year. And it begs the question that, you know, what hasn't happened up to now that's going to happen in this year to change the reality. But if I am to look around the room in terms of the ministers who have been a part of cabinet, I only think of one minister really who shines in different portfolios. And for me, that's Aaron Motsoaledi, who has had a significant impact during his time as Minister of Health, then also currently as Minister of as Minister of Home Affairs, has been really trying to turn around the difficult situation that we found the department in. So I think, you know, if history is anything to go by, the highest potential that I could see in terms of someone who would actually make an impact, I think would be, Minister Aaron Motsoaledi. But again, the challenge is that the problems that we face as a country on the electricity and energy crisis are largely political. And I don't think that, the approach of trying to, attack this from a supply issue or even from a technical issue are going to resolve the crisis, because at the same time, whilst you've got one minister in terms of the public enterprise minister dealing with the financial and organizational crisis at Eskom, we've got the same challenges with the minister at the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy being quite slow in terms of the emergency procurement and the independent power procurement program, which is supposed to work in tandem with in terms of the intervention that government is trying to do in order to resolve this crisis.
Let's move over to other aspects of the State of the Nation address. Many would say that in order to deal with the high unemployment rate, you also need to deal with the energy crisis. But do you think there were decent plans and promises made to deal with the unemployment rate in this country?
Not at all. And I think in as much as the State of the Nation address has focused on the key crisis of the energy, it has been quite bare in terms of anything else. And unfortunately, as a country, we're faced with crises on multiple fronts. And although it is welcome to focus, all the energy on the biggest crisis we faced, we are still facing a crisis of corruption, high unemployment, rising poverty. And, the other challenge I face is that the president seems to also not be consistent in some of the plans in space. Because last year, when the Just Energy Transition Plan and Investment plan came out, the target was around $98 billion that government was aiming to achieve in terms of investment in the energy crisis in South Africa. But now we're seeing the announcement being 1.5 trillion, which is just less than a billion. What is actually the plan? Is the plan to achieve $98 billion in investment, or is it the 1.5 trillion? And also, even on the 1.5 trillion, there were some commitments that were made during COP27 last year from South Africa's side, which don't seem consistent with the announcements by the president last night. One being that South Africa was planning to switch off some coal power stations this year and over the next couple of years. At the same time, the president announced this year that we're trying to make sure that we get the most in terms of generation from coal, but also complementing that with independent power from renewable sources. And so there is this problem of inconsistency, and it doesn't seem as though government in itself is working together towards resolving the problem. It seems as though the different departments and different personalities are pulling in different directions, and hence there's been no progress, and hence we keep rehashing plans and we keep getting told the same story over and over again, but with very little progress by way of improving the situation we're faced with.
Let's quickly move over, Sia, to the issue of small businesses. Now, they're obviously directly impacted by the red tape that exists, but also the ongoing rolling blackouts. And at the center of all of this, and to really get our economy out of the mess that it's in, a lot of it depends on having a consistent and reliable electricity supply. But many would say that the president also kind of dismissed small businesses and the struggles that they face on a daily, which at the end of the day, we need to remember that essentially they're the backbone of our economy, and they do contribute significantly to employment if they are allowed to do so. But given the circumstances, they often struggle to survive and stay afloat. Do you think the president should have said more when it comes to small businesses?
Yes, definitely. I think this is an area I think has been completely underemphasized in the State of the Nation address last night. And for me, it is these small businesses, small and medium enterprises that are going to create the jobs, because the large entities have got very little room for creating further jobs, and it's these small entities that will remain nimble in the current uncertain economic environment that we're faced with. And so if government is not supporting small and medium enterprises, we're not supporting an area of the economy that is the most agile during a time when it's really difficult to make long-term plans, given the uncertainty, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and other issues that are affecting the global economy at the moment. And so, yes, this is an area that has been completely neglected. And of course, there are other areas as well, such as the social issues, gender-based violence, etc., that are also have not been received much attention after last night's State of the Nation address.
Okay, thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it. I think there's a lot that the President, of course, needs to still deal with, but thanks so much. That was Ubuntu Nomics Director, Sia Biniza. Thanks for joining us.